going to the ground. Holy cow, there's a lot more gas in there than I thought. Hello and welcome to the shop. I'm Jared and this is the Questionable Garage, and this was a Mopar project I wasn't expecting to get, but we've got it now. This is a 1979 Dodge Ramcharger. A viewer reached out to me and said, hey, I'm out of time. I'm out of space. I don't have a garage. It's gotta get out of my garage. Please come get it. So that's what I did. Matthew, the viewer, went through a process over 6 years, taking this thing apart, completely bare, frame off restoration, built it back up, and then over the past year and a half, 2 years, was trying to get it to fire up, took it to 2 shops that completely failed him, and then I decided the best way of getting it home wouldn't be on a trailer, but to go down, try to get it running, and drive it 300 miles home after learning he had only driven it about 8 miles before the restoration. Victory! We were successful. We got from Brunswick, Georgia, all the way up here into North Georgia, the Cleveland area, and we really didn't have too many problems.
Well, fuel sending unit, gasket, maybe not fully in place. We have gauges. They don't work, but we do have them all.
There are problems, and our goal is to tackle and fix as many of them as we can with the parts that we've got on hand right now. We're gonna find something, try to fix it, and then move on to the next thing. The first thing we're gonna tackle, you can kind of sort of see it, there's a trail of fluid and a whole lot of kitty litter on the ground. It turns out our transmission was gonna keep fluid in it just long enough to get it back here to the shop. I went to pull it in and a line blew off. So let's get it up in the air. We're gonna take a quick look around the transmission and where our leaks are coming and see what we can do to get them fixed. Raycon's been a big channel partner for more than a year. I like sharing them with you because they fit into my everyday life, and that's why they have the everyday earbuds. Now with a new year comes tons of New Year's resolutions. Keep it simple, make 3. You know, I'm gonna do the gym and eat a little bit less because, well, I really need to. Go on more hot girl walks to get your head clear, get in a good headspace, and join the Raycon family if you haven't already. It's really easy with the everyday earbuds. Now, with the everyday earbuds, you get a bunch of options for protective cases. I've got the Galaxy, as well as tons of color. I'm simple, I like the black earbuds. They just kind of disappear in my ear. But with my Galaxy protective case, it makes it easy to find it in the house. You get 32 hours of battery life, but one of my absolute favorite features is the active noise canceling that you get in these earbuds. You're gonna spend more than double to get it in any other competitor's earbuds. And if you find yourself hitting the gym, trying to get a little bit more fit, going on those walks, and you're like me and perspire a little bit, the IP6 rating is gonna keep them safe and running long. Speaking of running, Raycon offers 5 different silicone tips, so they're gonna fit your ear tight and comfortable and not fall out while you're working on that resolution. Seriously, Raycon has been one of my favorite channel partners of all the different products. I absolutely love them. They're easy to fit into my everyday life because they're the everyday earbuds. They also have a complete range of other Bluetooth accessories, audio accessories, anything you could want, and you're gonna save 15%. All you need to do is head on over to buyraycon.com/questionable, and you're gonna get 15% off. That's their whole website, not just these. If you take a look at these and decide you wanted one of their other products, you're not gonna be disappointed with these, but they have a lot of really great stuff. Buyraycon.com/questionable, you're saving 15% off, and biggest, most important thing, you're helping the channel out when you support them. You're supporting me directly. We get to continue this partnership and do fun things like rescue bright lime green Ramchargers. Now let's get back to work.
We are getting some ATF spray down the whole truck. When we come on up here, you can see it looks like he got new lines that had the threaded style fittings, but potentially had barbs on his 727. Not 100%, so we will drag an oil drain over here and get those pulled off. Something else we're gonna end up doing, Dorman makes an off-the-shelf deep pan for newer trucks that bolt right on and has a drain plug in it. That one's actively dripping as we're talking, but on the transmission pans, when you put them in, it's really easy to want to over torque, but don't, because you can see it ends up mushing that gasket. There's also on those newer Mopars, a plastic and O-ring style gasket, infinitely better than anything you're gonna get on these older pans. And if you wanted, we'll go directly on that. But we're gonna try to fix things with parts we have on hand without spending too much money today. So let us shove another camera in here. I can just feel my hair just getting wrecked. And pull these lines back, take a look at what we got, and then go hunting on the shelves and see what we can come up with. I do appreciate that they did hold out for precisely as long as we needed. Not a moment longer. They got us to the shop and that was it. In the grand scheme of things, oh, that's all we need from it. It is a hose barb. Okay. Well, the good news is I have spare parts. So we have the right fitting. So that is one parts transmissions fittings and some Teflon tape. And we got ourselves a leaky transmission fixed. We gotta look at a speedometer cable. Yeah, that's not even hooked up. We got that massive fuel leak. When it fills up, we need to take a good look at. See if we can come up with a good Y on that. Which means we'll end up just probably dropping the tank. So, we are gonna get this fuel tank dropped down. Now, one thing I also wanna do when the fuel tank's out of it is, one, these bumper brackets are welded in. They shouldn't be. There's some extra brackets here that someone has welded in. So when the fuel tank's out and away and we don't have explosive bomb things, although fuel tanks are relatively safe, still, I don't want to be grinding and sending a bunch of sparks right into it. So we'll go ahead and when the tank's out so we can figure out that fuel leak, we're going to trim up our frame, make it just a little bit nicer. The vent hose is plenty long where I can loosen that, and I have access to this hose. Once it comes down a little bit more, then we can get the fuel sender and the feed line off, and then when we go to put it back up, we'll make sure not to pinch the feed line, since that was one of the big problems. So longer flathead, we'll have to lower it down because the trans jack doesn't quite go all the way up there. I mean, all in all, oh, well, that's a thing. Okay, so I guess he came up short on fuel hose or on the vent hose, and that was just shoved into an auger hose. That maybe isn't the best tactic on it, but that's fine. All right, let's get set down on probably would work better if I got a 9/16 and not a ½ inch. Somewhere I have got one of those really cool, like 10-inch deep 9/16 sockets specifically for this kind of work. I don't remember where that spot is. Also, is this a bundle for a trailer hitch? I'm also kind of hoping the tank's kind of low on fuel. Makes life a little easier to work on it. Oh goodness, oh, we're going to the ground. Holy cow, there's a lot more gas in there than I thought. That was tricky to catch too with the ATF all over it. Alright, so with this sitting down, there's a little bit of gas that fresh spilled, but you can tell some gas was sitting here, and when we looked in, we could tell the gasoline was sitting around the filler, but I don't know if it's the cork. Matthew did mention for the breather emission side that he had a hose in it. I didn't quite realize, understand what he was describing, so that would have been the old breather setup. It went from that and then just kind of laid, you can see where it was chafing or chattering a bit, right there where the gas is pooling. So, is that the leak or is this the leak? I want to figure out a bulkhead connector where we're going to be able to get that and run a hose much higher up for the vent. And we'll probably go ahead and pull the pickup just to take a look at that cork gasket. So, darn it, we're going to have to buy some parts. I was trying not to buy any parts, but It's inevitable. Now, we were talking about cutting off some brackets as well as we're standing up. So factory bumper mounts, meant to be bolted in, not welded in. The bumper we have for it actually needs to go and bolt there. All of this is in the way. Now, something I might look at trying to keep is this little piece of angle that was added in. I don't hate that being there, but that also is technically not supposed to be there. So we may end up cutting this out, leaving the factory rear cross member, getting that out of the way, so that way maybe that bumper goes right in there, nice and easy like. So those brackets there, this actually can be a tip hanger, undo these bolts and eliminate that bracket as well. That is a bonus. Always gotta love the bonus parts, so we're gonna keep just plucking away. I'm not sure if I'm gonna cut next or if we're gonna tear into the fuel tank. We'll do one of the two, and you're coming along for the adventure. So I had the blanket on top of the fuel tank, but a spark went underneath, ricocheted up, and lit a fuel line up. I heard it sizzling. Whew. It'd be that cut everyone uses of that giant explosion. Right there. Okay. Look at that. Now, that bumper's going to go right in there with no problem. So I'll probably regret it, but we're going to go ahead and slide the bumper in, making this stuff potentially much more difficult to get to. I did also send Matthew a message and confirmed this pigtail, by his memory and the best I can tell, is to set up for a trailer harness wiring. So what I'll do is we'll shorten that. And I don't know that I'll ever hook a trailer behind it, but we can put a little weather pack connector. So if we ever want to, we can then plug in a trailer lead. So that way it stays up and tucked nice and we don't have something down and dangling. I don't have enough hands. Does not appear to go in deep enough. Oh, I see. Some of this is bent, so it's not actually going up against the body as tight as it should. A couple options. We eliminate the vertical part of the diamond plate. If we did that, I don't really hate the way that'll end up looking. All right, well, more bumper play in the morning. So, fixing our breather. I could go the way everyone online seems to do. That's taking a tire valve stem, shoving it down the hole, reusing the factory bent metal pipe. But I'm gonna try something much more difficult. Stopped by my friend Randy, gave me a really nice threaded bulkhead, which fits perfectly. It's gonna let me run an AN hose off and up and work perfect as my breather and hopefully stop the fuel leak. But that requires access to the bottom, put the nuts on. My hand doesn't go in that hole or that hole. So a piece of welding wire here for my TIG. I have to tape the gasket and the nut to it, get it close and up, turn it down. One benefit is it doesn't need to be insanely tight. It needs to be snug. So I'm hoping like tightening the friction, things will hold good enough that I can get a good seal. Hopefully it'll be better than a rubber hose folded over that siphons the fuel out. I don't know. Like overcomplicating a problem that has simple solutions to it. But is that not our specialty? Step one, a little bit of tape. Try to keep the washer happy. The good news is too, this is aluminum, which as we all know is known for its magnetic properties. So if I drop it, it'll be really easy to fish right back out of there. Okay, we got that. And it's a fine line of wanting a lot of tape so we don't drop it, but not so much tape that we can't later pull it, you know, off. Okay, so we're gonna kick it up. So that's what we got. See it wiggling. Oh. Come on. You're a fishy fishy. Falling out. We're gonna get some light. A little bit of junk down there, mostly old sending or old sending unit pickup. Ah, ha, ha, ha. It's right there. Okay. There, okay. That is hooked. Let's put a little bit of that on there and then hopefully it'll stay put enough. And it's doing exactly what I hoped it would. Got nice and tight and we're pointed in the right direction. It released. Okay, we're in business now. Now it's just a matter of when we go in, we'll put a barb fitting and I'll actually run this and run it up the top to a little rattle valve. And then we can put the tank back in. Then we're back up to fixing transmission leaks and then some gauge wiring and a speedometer cable. I think we're gonna have our Ramcharger fixed up. So I brought in the bumper that Matthew had refinished, and it's one of those really cool ones, scraped up. But back in the day, you could get these work bumpers and the dealers would etch them, not a sticker. So, yep, crisp Chrysler from Cordell, Georgia. That's just kind of a cool bygone era. Now granted, in a modern car, I pull those stickers off right away because I bought the car from you. I'm not getting an advertising fee. But in a vintage car, it's kind of cool to have those things hanging out on the bumpers. You know, the actual etched in bumpers. Looking a lot better here. I do need to find the bolts because one's a threaded insert. Not sure, nut and bolt, and I need to figure out that thread pitch. Do not have a ton of SAE around here, and I am probably gonna sand that again. But that sure did bubble up awful. So we'll get that cleaned up and keep moving forward. We got a lot of wiring to sort through. We got a butt on the truck, also known as a bumper. Did some grinding and we got this thing to fit. She scuffed up a little bit in transport, so we're gonna figure out what paint that was so we can get it back right. Now, one thing I'm noticing, it looks like it's not level, but if we measure that gap and that gap, believe it or not, it's pretty much coming out correct, and you can kind of see the bumper, the flat part's a little wiggly. It works for now. We've got that wire tucked up and looking really good. A couple of the splices cleaned up there. Haven't gone and gotten cork yet for that because I'm trying to work through everything we do have parts on, so that way we make one trip to the store. Trying to work smarter. Not always, but we are trying today to be as efficient as possible. It feels weird doing that, you know, not just hitting, oh, I need a part, let's go get it. Let's work through everything we can do and then go get parts. New leaf or just a one-off? One-off. right, continuing the theme of let's fix a couple things and make some upgrades as we go. You notice I've got a transmission pan off. You've been watching the time lapse there. You also notice it kind of makes a mess when you pull it down because that glorious thing has no drain plug. And if you look, it's barely, not even quite an inch thick. So why are we pulling it off? One, the gasket was leaking. The standard gaskets that you get for 727, if you go 2 inch-pounds over spec, it's gonna leak on you. So we're doing an upgrade courtesy of a Dorman 265-827 and the upgraded O-ring style Mopar gasket. This is off the newer transmissions, but guess what? It bolts right up. Notice it's a little bit bigger. Also, that gasket's gonna hold up a lot better, and we have a drain plug. You have a couple options when you install these. You can buy extension kits that will drop that filter down, keep it really close to the bottom of it. But in our off-road world, we're looking for capacity to kind of help fight some heat. So we're not gonna drop that extension. We're not gonna put an extension on it. We're gonna keep that filter high. And the reason we know that won't be a problem is our dipstick doesn't change. If you notice, it's still right there. So it is gonna fill and live at the exact same level that it used to. We're just holding 2, 3, 4 more quarts of transmission fluid. So really, really simple upgrade. Summit, you can get it on jungle sites for mid-30s. Summit is $50 and most of your parts stores will price match it, and it's usually in stock to get this pan. Also with all the ribbing, it's heavily reinforced. It's not gonna warp when you tighten it down. So very worthwhile and a lot cheaper than a lot of the other upgraded pans. I've got a shifter bushing to try for the shift linkage. And then I think we can go to the parts store so we can get a fuel tank in it. And then it runs and drives again. Well, we are back to it, believe it or not. I got my hair cut, and it's been a week since the last time we were working on the Ramcharger. I was trying to get all of this work done before Christmas and before family flew in, and it didn't work out. So we're gonna work through a couple more problems. One, the choke cable is miserable to operate. It does not pull in and out smoothly at all. Then we're gonna take a look at our voltage regulator, see what it's charging now, make sure the wiring to that regulator is good. They come out of the box bad a lot anymore. It's kind of disappointing. You can't get reliable, good parts sometimes. Once something gets so old, they don't quite make them like they used to. So we'll get a camera set up so I can show you how unsmooth that choke cable operation is, and then we'll work on getting that swapped out, and then, you know, that really easy to get to voltage regulator there. We'll make sure that wiring is correct between the two, and if we're gonna have to make a parts run. All right, I was trying to get you guys close enough to see what we're dealing with. So that is your choke cable. So if we come in here, I go to move it, we get it to pull out, but if you notice, it does not go back. When the cable tries to move, it bends around, nothing happens. Yeah. So the fact that we're not pinned on anything and it's still giving us problems confirms my suspicion. Something in that cable is very unhappy. How many times are you looped around? This is impressive. Listen, it doesn't matter how big you are. If you have a big lifted truck, you're not graceful working on it. Also, got a really fun Christmas present. I love bird feeders. Hadn't had one for a while. So Editor Dwayne got me one of those cool ones with the cameras built in. Problem is when you live in the woods, it goes off a lot. A lot. So Not ideal that it's spun around, but this should still move pretty smooth. And it doesn't. It is very crunchy. So, going back in, we got ourselves a Dorman 55101 universal choke cable kit. We just will have to cut this baby down the length. So, I'm willing to bet we get this baby unwound. And, ow. Ow. That moves a lot better. So in order to shorten, we need to pull the metal rod all the way out so we don't damage it when cutting. And because it wasn't Teflon lined, we can just cut it easily. If you're going to use a cutting wheel with Teflon lined, remember, you're gonna have to deburr it because it's gonna melt the plastic down a little. Also, if you're gonna be shoving metal wire and cables through, I would go ahead and make sure you don't have your battery connected, because that was basically sitting on a start relay, almost arcing it. So I don't really have steps tools because I don't normally need them. That's also why James complains sometimes. It's a reasonable complaint. Oh, I can actually move the cable out here with the choke. I say that's a little bit better. All right, so next up, voltage regulator. It's just 2 wires. Okay, so these are labeled alt top, alt side, so smart to always make sure you label your stuff. It does have a really nice, good, clean ground. He got that right. Let me double check wiring pins. All right, so one's ignition. You old Mopar guys know this right away, don't you? Field wires can go on either or. So what I need to make sure is we are indeed getting 12 volts on this white wire. Okay, that's 12 volts, so, and that wire's good. Regulator is bad. Alright, so we're temporarily giving it ignition power. For some reason, the painless alternator field wire, that 12 volt, that white one there, it keyed on and was giving us 12 volt, but we're not getting it anymore. So, giving it on our own power, we're back to the spicy voltage. Makes me think we got 2 problems. A bad regulator and a bad power feed. So, let me clean up some wiring and we'll see what we end up with. But before I run and do that, let's talk gauges inside once I get this thing shut off, because it's a little loud, but runs pretty stinking good. Update on the charging system. Was doing a couple more checks, wiggled the snot out of things, and voltage came back on that white wire. So we're gonna recrimp that. That's where some people think it's funny when we talk about a jiggle or wiggle or, you know, pull test. It's very valid. You never know with wiring if, when you're going down the road, it vibrates and quits working. The biggest thing is, especially more on modern computer cars, if it's suddenly acting up, quit wiggling for a moment and check on each end of the harness, and then go back to wiggling and see what part of the harness you're moving to make it go. Also, that upgraded transmission pan we did, that holds a lot of fluid. I'm 9 quarts in and it's just now on the stick. So, substantial upgrade over the little puny thing we had before. So, that's a big upgrade, I think. I think we're gonna do good there. So, I'm just gonna recrimp that wire. You've seen me crimp a bunch of wires, and then we're gonna go to the interior and talk about what we've got going on in that region on the other side. Gauge cluster. As you can tell, it's not there anymore, and we have got the painless wires pulled out here. And if we come over here, I made a discovery. I'm not a Ramcharger guy. I didn't realize that all of the factory gauges have been completely cut out, gutted, and removed. If I was a smart person, I would have recognized a Sun Pro and realized they're aftermarket, because Sun Pro is not factory. And as I got to looking, like our temperature sender, that has to stay intact. So that's broken. It's a mechanical oil pressure gauge. So the only thing we can easily potentially make work would be the fuel level, which is a very useful gauge of all of them, probably the most important. But do we go through trying to make old semi-accurate vintage gauges work, or do we go ahead and track down and reach out to like New Vintage or something like that and get a really nice gauge pack for this thing? I kind of feel like maybe trying to get a new, really nice gauge pack. We'll see. I'm going to try to figure out the wiring. The other thing that's going to be fun is, so we've got these bare wires, and I would love to know if you, know if I got a turn signal on it. So this would have used just your standard old round bullet connector. What I can still make work is I can trace this. So this is my left indicator. So we connect that. This is my right indicator. There's a common. I just have to figure out if the common is meant to be positive or ground, because you'll notice this one pin comes up, ties into here, and ties into here. That's illumination. Easy enough to figure out. This pin with the ugly solder joint connects to every single bulb. So that is either power or ground. So I'm going to hunt up a wiring diagram really quick, confirm what we're getting put out on the other side. I think it's a common ground with positive sent to everything. And that's going to be able to give us a backlight for the speedometer. We're going to have left and turn indicators. We're going to have a high beam indicator, and we're going to have, the panel lights. So we're going to make some of this stuff work. And we also have a good speedo cable so we can know how fast we're going and I don't have to look at my phone. So we get that cleaned up. And then even though I just rewired this, I'm going to clean this all up, because that just bugs the tar out of me. It doesn't need 17 feet of wire at your knees. And then I am trying to track down the nut. It's a fancy little nut, so we can put that where it goes. Because something you didn't see in the footage is I went to turn my high beams off once in traffic, and I actually kicked that and turned my lights off in extraordinarily rural Georgia in the middle of the night. And it was a frantic couple seconds of me trying to find the headlight switch, get it pulled back out, and found that thankfully I was still true on the road. I didn't veer too far off either direction. So, all right, wiring diagram time, and cue up wiring montages. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Knocked you over, but you're back up again. Let's get you caught up on that exciting wiring. I was gonna solder onto these pins, but then I realized my aluminum barrels slid on pretty much perfectly. So we have our high beams, we have our indicators, we have our panel lights, and a ground going there. I have got fuel, power, ground, all set up here, because I'm hoping maybe fuel gauge will work and we can get an ammeter working so we can see what our charge is. Technically, if I went and bought a line kit, we could maybe get oil pressure working, coolant out of the picture. So this was done. I don't know if this is factory, if they glued this in. Pretty ingenious. It makes, if you don't have a connector kit, installing and removing pretty easy. So yeah, it's bus bar, powers and grounds and signals. Makes it just a little bit less messy. Speaking of which, we are making progress. We got our connector here. I got my ground, which we'll still need to get plugged in somewhere. I just have a real long lead for now. But that will tuck in. That'll plug in well. Working on getting all this other stuff. Those are vacuum lines. Still have that to do. And finding our connectors for our headlight switch so that can fit nice. So just cleaning it up. It worked. And it's good to know it worked, because then we can tidy things up and make it nice and pretty. Again, nothing against Matthew. He didn't finish the truck. He was still working on it. He couldn't get it running and ran out of time, so I don't expect a polished wiring harness because, well, he took it all apart to figure things out and was still working on it. So wiring is never fast. It's hard to make it exciting. If wiring is exciting, it means you probably caught something on fire, which is not a good thing. And plug for one of my t-shirts, nothing's more permanent than temporary wiring that works. And I'm trying not to let that be the case here because everything worked. Why am I taking it apart? We're trying to make it a little bit nicer. So I'm gonna keep plucking away at all of this wiring here, getting it cleaned up and making progress. Well, there's some of the extra wire we pulled out, and I feel like we're looking a whole lot cleaner. About to hook up some power and see what happens, if it still runs, if our knobs and signals work. So I still have not found what load. It should not really spark on this old of a car. It's not computers firing up. I'm not sure what might be staying hot, but let's just come in here. Turn our ignition on. That sounded like possibly a fuse popping. That wiggled. All right, still starts. Little choke. So fuel sending, not working. Hey, okay, left. Well, we don't see right, but is it blinking right? Okay, so that might just be a bulb. Headlights on. Is the illumination coming on? I can't tell, like the sun's right on it. Who knows? High beam? No high beam indicator. Is that a bulb problem? Oh no. There is a little blue light on down there. It's just taking things a while to wake back up. At least we got some progress. We don't have a fuel level yet, but who knows? We'll see. So remember I said it sounded like something popped? That's a blown up fuse. So I disconnected the amp meter and look at that. The fuel gauge went up. So indicators work, high beam works. It may just be the switch isn't twisted the right way for the panel lights, and we did pop a fuse, so I am not gonna chase these SunPro gauges. I'm gonna just work on getting something better, because only 2 of the 4 could potentially work, and is that really worth the hassle? Not to me. So we'll look at a potential new gauge set. I'm not sure, but now that we've got a lot of wiring fixed, hopefully our transmission fluid permanently fixed and not a problem, we can go for another drive. We'll go fill it with gas and see if we manage to fix the fuel leak and just enjoy driving it now that hopefully we know the speed we're going. So obviously, mechanically, the truck wasn't that bad. We were able to drive the 300 miles. We just had issues with some wiring not being finished because Matthew never finished it. We were not vomiting transmission fluid. We have 8 extra quarts than we did before. So if we were leaking, we'd be good for a little bit longer. I know if my turn signals are on, and I know if my high beams are on. It's just a whole bunch of wind, and it's just a nicer truck to drive. We still don't have the top, but that's okay. I mean, we have the top, it's not on. I don't know if you're ever really meant to drive a truck like this with the top on. And we make this right turn. Right turns are not this truck's strong point. The style of steering in this, if you don't address it when you lift the truck, it's gonna make steering not as good. We can go left really well, not so much right.
Maybe this was being built for NASCAR, some other circle tracks, who knows? So the other big problem with this style of suspension lift is, like any movement, the truck is incredibly darty and is not stable. That made for a very exhausting 300 miles. Not only were we dealing with wind and the elements and the nighttime and figuring out a truck we didn't really know much about, I was having to drive a truck with a very unhappy suspension. Now again, I'm not going to say anything bad about Matthew. The truck was built this way with the front lift before he worked on it. So if you don't understand off-road trucks, you're not going to see what's wrong with it. But what's wrong with it is very bad. We've talked about caster in the past and what it does. Dwayne did a fantastic diagram of showing bicycle handlebars turned backwards. This is the extreme of that. So we're going to go for a little drive. I'm hopefully going to get some decent footage and not lose a GoPro under the truck. And then I guess we can clock wipe right back to the shop. So it's not like I'm putting my poor loving life through a very cold 40-degree high wind drive in a topless truck. There's dirt piles and dirt in a four-wheel drive truck, so you're gonna do four-wheel drive things. Also, fuel leak is definitely fixed, otherwise it'd be pouring out right now. And for a change, things actually kind of look as steep as it is. That kind of looks cool. Look at it. Does off-road stuff. Who would have thought a lifted off-road truck would do off-road things? All right, I know we said we were gonna go inside and talk suspension, but smarter people than me, you can see it really good even though it's buried in the mud. And I want to talk about what makes it so incredibly dangerous, how this truck has its lift done, and something you should never ever do. A Ramcharger has what's basically called a negative arc leaf spring, or very close to zero arc, meaning when all the weight is on it, the front leaf spring, which is your main suspension component, sits flat or bows up slightly. So we're going to use a $2 bill as our leaf spring. So if you're used to most springs, they kind of bow a little bit like this. You need a shackle because as that suspension compresses, the 2 points get further apart, or as it droops, they get closer together. So if you had fixed mounts on both sides of your spring, it can't do that. There's no movement or room for the spring to grow. Again, with your zero arc or negative arc, it goes up and down, but you still have to have a point for it to move. The way this suspension is designed, when you go to a longer shackle or a proper spring pack that is going to raise it, you're going to push your pinion down slightly and you're going to increase caster. Caster, as we've talked a lot about, is how you kind of make a truck drive really well. But if you do what's done here, you end up with no caster, or negative caster in the case of this truck. And the way they achieved their lift is your front spring eyelet, which is supposed to be mounted close to the frame, they put shackles in it, bolted the shackle, then welded the shackle and put the spring on it, which has just rolled the axle completely forward. The steel is not strong enough. There's nowhere near enough mount. So you actually end up with your front wiggling. So if we go back to our dollar here, in the middle is where your axle is. Because we have so much wiggle, your axle
now moves. Rather than staying in a fixed point as it comes up and down, everything is wiggling around, which makes it incredibly darty. There's no safe anything about this. And realistically, had I really looked at how that front lift was done, probably shouldn't have driven it. We did, we've got it back safe, but it is a very beyond questionable wrong way to do it. So another just quick visual, I figured we'll go with some sticks. So in the front, this is the front of the truck, this is the back of the truck. This, I don't know how well this looks or if it's just as dumb as it actually is. I'm using what I got. We're in a dirt field. So this are your upper and lower ball joints, your knuckle inside there. And if you do it correctly and raise in the rear, you rotate this back. You gain a little bit of caster. You end up with some pinion angle problems and create some drive shaft trickery. That happens no matter what when you lift the truck. But the way they did this, they did not change the rear shackle and they increased the length of the front shackle mount by shackle. So you can see how much that rotates it forward. Again, dangerous, don't do it. I will go back to the shop and we'll talk just a little bit about how we're gonna fix it. All right, so how are we gonna fix the front suspension? The front lift, well, we've got to throw a lot of stuff away. We're gonna start over, even though it's got brand new leaf springs in the front, they are stock height springs meant for normal setup, not what this has. So we will have to order a lot of parts. We're trying to do all the things we could for cheap or free or what we already had included. And we've got this truck driving so much better, so much more already working on it. And we're now at the point that we're gonna have to spend a little bit of money. We got to figure out what we're going to do with the gauges and again, the suspension, but we're getting close to having this Ramcharger completely finished. Again, Matthew, you built a good truck. It needs finishing, but you didn't say it was done. You were trying to get it done and had to move. Also, all the commenters saying, finish this and give it back to Matthew. It's his dream truck. I don't know how clearly you made it. This was a situational truck for Matthew. He loves Mopars. He lived at the beach. This is a Mopar that could carry his kayak to the beach. He does have a dream Mopar. Maybe we can explore that a little bit more, but this isn't his dream truck and he doesn't necessarily want it back. If he's not going to the beach, he's not really into a lime green Ramcharger. Although I'm really into a lime green Ramcharger and apparently you guys are too. Appreciate you guys watching it, sharing your opinions and some of your help and support about getting this thing as good as it can be. But that's gonna do it for today. We have gotten a lot of little things fixed that we really couldn't do in a garage far away from our shop, but appreciate you guys, as always, hanging out with us while we work on a very questionably green Ramcharger. I'm Jared, reminding you guys to always make questionable choices and always say yes to a free vehicle.